Good morning and welcome to First Five's Parent Engagement and Support Bidders Conference. My name is Dr. Laniqua Howard and I'm joined by a number of colleagues, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
I'm Shelley Skillern.
Hi, good morning, June Allen with Technology.
Good morning, Lisa Erickson.
So the purpose of today's webinar is to walk through the Parent Engagement and Support RFP that was released on February 7th and to answer any questions you may have. The RFP is very detailed, so we will not go over everything that's included in the RFP, but we will discuss the main points. Before we begin, I'm going to turn things over to June to discuss some housekeeping items.
Alrighty. So everyone will be put on mute at this point, in that we want to ensure that we can get through the presentation and leave time for question and answering at the conclusion. If you have any questions, please use the chat box, and we'll take questions and present questions at the end of our presentation.
Okay, so to get us started, I'm going to just go over a brief overview of First Five. First Five is the largest funder of early childhood programming in Alameda County. We are mainly funded through the tobacco tax, Proposition 10, which added a 50-cent tax to each pack of cigarettes. Each county in California has a First Five agency, and agencies are able to emphasize different things. At First Five Alameda County, our vision is that every child in our county has optimal health, development, and well-being to reach his or her full potential. And to ensure this is possible, we work in partnership with the community to provide a county-wide continuous prevention and early intervention system. In doing this, we focus on two main county-wide results. All children are ready for kindergarten, and all children are free from abuse and neglect. In order to achieve these results, research and practice tells us that we have to create a holistic system of care that focuses on a number of components. This includes addressing basic needs and focusing on comprehensive health and development, quality early learning, thriving neighborhoods, and family resilience, which includes supporting leadership opportunities and social connections for parents, and ensuring family voice is in policy, advocacy, and our program development. With these core components in mind, we created a policy agenda that focuses on reducing inequality and child poverty, supporting family engagement, leadership, and community well-being, and funding and growing programs that make a difference for families. This policy agenda set the stage for the Parent Engagement and Support RFP that was released on Friday. We know that children grow up in the context of their families and neighborhoods, and that children have better outcomes when parents feel empowered, engaged, and supported. So the RFP was designed to support programming that addresses needs in the community and increases access to services and opportunities for young children and their families. And to ensure that we are investing in the right mix of programs and services, we engaged a group of parent leaders and early child providers in the design of the RFP. And these stakeholders, known as the Parent Engagement and Support Design Team, were instrumental in framing the RFP and outlining the values they would like to see reflected in the services provided by grantees. They also developed recommendations on the types of services needed to support young children. We'll hear more about these recommendations later, but for now, I'm going to turn things over to Shelley, who will walk us through the various components of the RFP, starting with the fundamentals.
Good morning. Through this RFP, First Five seeks to fund up to 4 qualified nonprofit or public agencies funded at no more than $225,000 from July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021 to develop and operate parent engagement and support programs. Successful grantees will be funded for an additional year. These programs will not be required to reapply through an RFP process. All proposals are due by 5 p.m. on March 20th, 2020. Late or incomplete submissions will not be accepted. The overarching goal of the RFP is to have grantees develop and operate parent engagement and support programs that can impact the following: children who are on track and ready for kindergarten, parents and or caregivers with children under the age of 5 have what they need to support their child's growth and well-being, parents and caregivers with children under 5 have leadership and advocacy skills and opportunities to use them. To help ensure resources go to the most in need, First Five has identified 9 zip codes that we consider priority services. You can find more information on these zip codes in Appendix A of the RFP. While proposals in other zip codes are permitted, preference will be given via weighted scoring to applicants who plan to operate in these 9 zip codes. For organizations who are not housed in one of these zip codes, but plan to provide services in one of these communities, we will be looking to see who you're going to partner with in the community and how you are going to access and build relationships with families. Additionally, because First Five currently has several investments in Oakland, additional points will be given to zip codes listed above that are outside of Oakland. These include 94541, 94544, and 94578. Please see Appendix A if you would like more information on how we determine what zip codes are priorities for services. As mentioned before, the design team dedicated a significant amount of time to identifying and highlighting the types of services young children and their parents need. A full list of the team's program and service ideas are included in Appendix C of the RFP. Here and in the body of the RFP, we have highlighted the 4 priority programs identified by the design team. While your score will not be affected if you do not select one of these programs represent a selection of the types of programs, services, and resources this funding opportunity seeks to support. There are also services families and providers have indicated are needed, and we encourage potential applicants to consider including these programs or elements of them in their proposals. In addition to providing programming recommendations, the design team also identified desired qualifications and feedback around the values they would like to see reflected in the organizations and providers that serve families in Alameda County. Their feedback, often verbatim, is reflected in our list of desired qualifications on page 11 of our RFP. The questions and scoring criteria, as reflected in Appendix D, comes directly from the desired qualification. As an example, this slide shows how desired qualifications inform the questions asked in the RFP and then are tied to the scoring criteria in the RFP. Thus, all the scoring criteria are reflective of the design team's vision for stronger communities and organizations. Now let's discuss some of the nuts and bolts of the RFP. Starting on page 12, you will find a list of our contract requirements. This information explains what can be funded through the grant and what will be required, such as general liability and workers' compensation insurance, should you receive grant funding. If you have questions about any of the items listed under proposal requirements, please let us know during the question and answer section. On page 14 of the RFP, we identify the various opportunities we put in place to increase capacity building and partnerships during the grant period. These opportunities include technical assistance to support the implementation of programs and services, assistance with quality improvement, a quarterly learning community, connections and integration with First Five programs like Help Me Grow. We are also committed and expect grantees to be committed to seeking fund development opportunities to support coordinated investment and sustainability of the programs and services developed and implemented through the grant. The last thing I want to underscore with regards to the nuts and bolts of the RFP is our commitment to data and evaluation. First Five will work with grantees on results-based accountability, otherwise known as RBA, to track performance and outcomes. Additionally, we are committed to tracking individual and demographic data for children, parents, and providers in whom we invest in order to understand if or how our investments contribute to the outcomes we hope to support. Grantees will be expected to comply with First Five's individual and demographic data collection guidelines. To learn more about RBA, please see Appendix B. I know that we've gone over a lot of information, so let's recap. Proposals must meet the following criteria. Demonstrate that the proposed activities support the parent engagement and support goals and the First Five Alameda County strategic plan performance measures as described in these proposal guidelines. Comply with the guidelines set forth in the RFP. be complete and submitted online by 5 p.m. on March 20th, 2020. Ensure all additional documents, such as letters of commitment from collaborating agencies, proof of fiscal sponsorship if applicable, must be received at First 5 Alameda County by 5 p.m. on March 20th, 2020. And this would be via our High Five system. Now for the scoring criteria. All proposals submitted by the deadline will be screened and scored by First 5 staff. The most competitive proposals will be forwarded to a review panel made up of parents, community members, providers, and advocates. Funding recommendations by the community review panel will be based upon proposal scores, consideration of geographic distribution, and balance across funding priorities. These recommendations will inform the final recommendations made by the First 5 leadership to the First 5 Alameda County Commission for approval. Each proposal will be evaluated against criteria that will guide readers to assess the quality and comprehensiveness of responses to the proposal questions in a consistent way. See Appendix D for the complete scoring criteria. The relative weight of each section of the scoring criteria is as follows. Organizational capacity, 20%, need for proposed services, 10%, approach, 25%, scope of work, 10%, management and staffing, 10%, budget and budget justification, 10%, and service sites, 15%. And on the slide that you can see here is our timeline for the RFP. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to contact us if you need any more information. I'd like to highlight the 2 technical assistance trainings that are coming up, the first on March 3rd and the second on March 4th. During these technical assistance, we will be here to answer any questions regarding High Five, to provide space for you to work, as well as Wi-Fi and any other assistance that we can give.
Okay. So Shelley, I'd like to share a little bit more around High Five. It is our custom-built web-based application. The URL is located within Appendix F, as in Frank, of the RFP packet, and you also can access the URL on the First 5 Alameda County website. Everyone who is using a High Five application, please make sure that you use Chrome. It is the recommended and best practice application. Internet of access for, for using the, it's the best browser for using High Five. Secondly, we have, everyone is required to create a user account to be able to submit an application in High Five. I wanted to give a heads up about the account creation experience in High Five. It asks for a little bit more than just your name and organization. We are asking for more details, such as who you are serving in our community and in what capacity and how long. These things are part of our desire to understand who's using our resources and who's and allowing us to make funding decisions and informing the success of our programs. So please bear with the user account creation process. It is also recommended that you review, when completing the application process, to complete the eligibility section first before completing any other components of the application. As said earlier, all submissions are due on Friday, March 20th at 5 p.m. So please make sure that you read Appendix F before you get started, and make sure you understand the return submission support policy, in the sense that you may have your application done earlier, or you may have erroneously hit the submit button and want it returned to you. We have an established return policy already set up so that if you say or call the help desk and say, hey, I accidentally submitted my application, I would like it returned, there's a documented process that we want to adhere to ensure that you get your application back, but that you also remember to resubmit it. So please take a look at Appendix F for that process. And we're asking that if you can, don't wait till 4:59 to hit that submit button. We want to make sure every application gets in and gets an opportunity for review. Lastly, the help desk, the technology help desk is available Monday through Friday from 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. You can email us, you can phone us. In doing both, if you don't get, especially with the telephone, if you don't get someone on the line live, please make sure you leave a name, number, and a detailed explanation of what you're experiencing so that we can be prepared when we call you back. We can do our little homework and be able to maybe resolve the issue or inform how to support you when we're able to return your call. And again, just a reminder, we have 2 technology assistance days scheduled for March 3rd and 4th. We're here to help with the High Five application, provide you space for Wi-Fi, laptop, space for collaboration if that is not available to you out in the community at your workspace or what have you. And we look forward to supporting you all.
Wonderful, thank you, June. So we're going to move right into the Q&A section. As June mentioned, when we begin the webinar, you can type any questions you may have in your chat box, and then we'll begin to address those.
We have the first question here for scoring criteria. Approach has the greatest weight in the score of 25%. Can you expound upon that? We're going to prepare a response. We'll be right back on.
So I'm going to respond to the question for the scoring criteria. The question was, approach has the greatest weight in the score of 25%. Could you expound upon what that means? That means that we put greater weight on approach than other components of the RFP. I think that if that didn't answer your question, then let me know.
Okay. The second question, our South Alameda County program site is located in a zip code adjacent to 2 of the targeted zip codes. We are actively doing outreach to families in the target zip codes. Is that sufficient to meet the criteria?
And yes, that is. So we do not require you to actually have an office within one of the zip codes, but to make sure that the services that you're providing are reaching the families in those zip codes and explaining how that's being done. That's a 2-part question. The second question is, can you explain what kindergarten readiness means and how it is measured? We're going to take a moment to prepare a response.
Where are we? I can't read the question.
Can you explain? We're ready to respond to, can you explain further what kindergarten readiness means and how it is measured?
So I'm going to refer you to page 7 of the RFP, which explains how we define school readiness, kindergarten readiness at First 5 Alameda County. You'll see the building blocks of kindergarten readiness on the top of page 7. So, and there's also a link there, so you can read more about our kindergarten readiness assessment that talks about how we assess it across the county. I do want to point out that we also have an internal survey tool that we use with our programs that also have some kindergarten readiness type questions that are that parents actually respond to in the survey to talk about how they feel their kids are doing and how our programs impact the school readiness components. And if you're interested, we can share those surveys with you when we put out our FAQ. We can put our internal surveys on the FAQ as well for more information.
The next question we have is, how much weight is given to the priority zip codes?
So in Appendix D, we have listed out the scoring criteria, and you can get a score between 1 to 5 for each criteria. And if you are operating in one of the priority zip codes, you get an extra point.
Next question. We are based outside the priority zip codes, but working in at least one of them. Can you talk about the type of collaborations you are looking for in the priority area? We're going to mute and prepare a response. Alrighty, we're responding to the question. We are based outside the priority zip codes, but working in at least one of them. Can you talk about the type of collaborations you are looking for in the priority area?
Sure. So it kind of depends on the programs that you're going to be proposing, but I can give an example of a collaboration. Let's say that you wanted to plan a parent cafe or implement a parent cafe or a playgroup, but you don't have the facility to do that in maybe one of the zip codes outside of the priority areas. You would maybe have to develop a partnership agreement with a site that's in the priority zip code so that you're able to provide services within that zip code. That's just one example of the kind of collaboration that you might develop.
Okay. Our next question. We are interested in partnering with several other agencies as part of our proposal. You mentioned letters of commitment are required for our partnering organizations. Are there guidelines on what those letters must include? And is there a limit to how many organizations can collaborate per one proposal? We're going to prepare an answer. We'll be right back. Alrighty, we're prepared to respond to the question. We are interested in partnering with several other agencies as part of our proposal. You mentioned letters of commitments are required for our partnering organizations. Are there guidelines on what those letters must include? And is there a limit to how many organizations can collaborate per one proposal?
So we were intentionally not prescriptive when developing the RFP because we know that many of the agencies participating on this call are working really closely with community, and we know that you are experts and that you're working with parents on what is needed in the community. So you can partner with as many organizations that you would like to or that's needed to fulfill the program requirements, as long as you're able to manage those partnerships. And we can provide some templates and examples of partnership agreements, but again, we're not going to prescribe what you need to do.
Okay, another question. Are there any limitations on using grant funds to provide food, stipends, and/or other stipends? We'll prepare a response. Be right back. Okay, we are responding to, are there any limitations on using grant funds to provide food, stipends, and other stipends such as incentives?
No, there are no limitations, especially because we recognize that these are things that you need and sometimes for engaging families. So, but one thing to keep in mind is that the reviewers will be looking at your budget and your scope of work to make sure that it's, that it makes sense. So they will look at the level that you're spending on these things to see if it, if it's in line with your scope of work and your approach.
We have another question. A follow-up on the kindergarten readiness. Would we be eligible if we are working primarily with 3-year-olds during the first year of the grant and thus won't have full readiness measures during the first year, though we will be continuing to work with them as they progress to kindergarten? I.e., will it be sufficient to show other progress measures towards K readiness in order to meet the criteria for the first year? We're going to prepare a response. We are responding to the follow-up for kindergarten readiness. Would we be eligible if we are working primarily with 3-year-olds during the first year of the grant and thus won't have full readiness measures during the first year, though we will be continuing to work with them as they progress to kindergarten? Will it be sufficient to show other progress measures towards kindergarten readiness in order to meet the criteria for the first year?
Yes, you do not have to have full readiness measures done, and our evaluation team will work with you and help you through the RBA measures to make sure that we're adequately measuring your programming throughout the grant cycle.
Another question, can this funding be used to expand on programs already being delivered? We'll prepare a response. We are ready to respond to, can this funding be used to expand on programs already being delivered?
Yes, this funding can be used to expand on programs already being delivered. However, we would need to see that it is an actual expansion, because if it wasn't clear, that would be considered supplantation. First Five funding is not able to supplant services that are already being delivered. This is a little complicated, so I would recommend following up, after the call, after the webinar, if it's still a little bit confusing. But basically, yes, expansion and new services are eligible, but you cannot supplant current services.
All righty, next question. Are we required to create kindergarten readiness assessments for the kids? Or can we focus on parent readiness, engagement, leadership measures? And we are primarily, this is an agency that primarily has a parent engagement program.
Yes, you can. Again, we're not prescriptive about what you're doing. We set forth some recommendations in the RFP based on the Parent Design Committee, but you can present whatever programming you think is needed in your community.
All right, we have another question. A clarification from the previous question. Does that mean we can't seek funding for existing services? Okay, we're going to be responding. Someone asked for additional clarification from the previous question regarding funding used to expand programs already being delivered. This question was, does that mean we can't seek funding for existing services?
Yes, technically it means you cannot seek funding for existing services unless you're wanting to fund an expansion of those existing services. I think, again, this is kind of a nuanced situation, so I would recommend maybe taking this offline and we can have a follow-up conversation with you about your particular situation. But yes, the funding is meant to expand or to do something new, but not necessarily to supplant what you're already doing.
And given that we have a number of callers who have questions around this, what we'll do is develop a formal response so that everyone is receiving this exact same information, and we'll make sure that's posted to our website by 5 p.m. on February 25th.
Next question. Can you describe parent readiness measurements?
So we're going to refer you back to page 7 of the RFP, and one of the frameworks that we use to guide our work is the protective factors framework, and so that includes measures around parent resiliency, social connections, knowledge of parenting and child development, concrete supporting times of need, and social and emotional competence for children. And that's one of the frameworks that a lot of people will use when thinking about parent engagement and protective factors. So if you have additional questions, please let us know.
Next question. Can this funding be used on a program that no longer has funding, but if awarded, would allow for the program to continue? This is a response to, can this funding be used on a program that no longer has funding, but if awarded, would allow for the program to continue?
So yes, and it's going to be part of our more detailed explanation around supplanting. So please stay tuned, and we'll have a detailed response on February 25th by 5 p.m. on our website.
Next question. You retracted that one. Okay, it's retracted. So our next question. What will the time capacity commitment look like to participate in the learning community?
So we have not spelled out all of the details yet, but assuming it'll probably be 1 or 2 hours for a quarterly learning community meeting.
Next question. We are developing a train the trainer on one of our parent engagement and leaderships program. Would offering a train the trainer where those trained would then create new parent groups be considered parent engagement? Or would you recommend proposals that include direct parent engagement from our own staff? Responding to the question, we are developing a train the trainer on one of our parent engagement and leadership programs. Would offering a train the trainer where those trained would then create new parent groups be considered parent engagement? Or would you recommend proposals that include direct parent engagement from our own staff?
And both proposals would be considered parent engagement. But again, we want to make sure that you're putting forth the programming that's needed in your community. So regardless of what model you decide to take, we just want to make sure that it's addressing the needs that have been identified in your community. We're going to give everyone just one last chance if there are any outstanding questions. So I'm going to give it 1 minute, or any comments as well.
Question. For clarity, is the $225,000 per grantee, or is the amount shared between 4 grantees?
It is per grantee. Well, I would like to thank you all for joining the webinar. You've asked some really outstanding and thoughtful questions. And if you have additional questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out to us. We're putting up now our parent engagement and support grants manager information, as well as the help desk information. So feel free to reach out at any time, and we will make sure to answer the funding question again on February 25th by 5 p.m. on the website. And this recording of the webinar will also be added to the website by tomorrow at 5 p.m. Thank you so much. We appreciate your time. Have a good day.